I might be crazy. Maybe I'm mixing up movies I've done the podcast on and movies I've just seen recently. But I feel like I've seen a lot of movies that are not love, like it, not like a romance really, but it's about love, and it's always much more disappointing than a romance movie because they're just not very happy.
Yeah, I was
I
thinking the same thing,
yeah.
that exact same thing, but I was like, this is another love story that
Love
I'm getting.
adjacent. I don't know.
I mean,
That's not it.
it is
It's not
love.
that.
It's
Lost love.
Our series has now been. Well, let me intro the podcast first. As you know, I don't know how to start the podcast, so it'll be whatever we've done in the last few minutes, or something along the lines of Welcome Late to the Movies. My name is Ben Hull. This podcast where my friends and I get to fill in our movie blind spots. Each week we'll pick a film that either I or guest hadn't seen before and really should have turned around by now. This week, continuing, maybe, depending on if any of the episodes are out yet, Pride Month, it is Portrait of a Lady on Fire, here to talk us all through it. There's 3 rows of people's faces this time, so I can't do clockwise. I'll just go left to right, row by row. Lindsey.
hello.
Greg.
Bonjour.
Marshall.
Hello.
Ray.
Hi.
And Craig and Gyark bring up the rear at long last after Ray.
At least I'm not after them this time.
We're going to talk about Portrait of a Lady on Fire for Pride Month. I was going to say, before we get there, we can do the normal thing. I also sort of like cut off whatever we were talking about before that, and then immediately forgot what we were talking about. And I apologize.
Movies being about love, but not really
Yes.
romance.
Yes. So our series, did it start with Before Sunrise? And then
Yes.
we did something, and then we did Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Past
We
Lives.
did Past Lives, yeah.
Yes, past lives. Yeah, a lot of
Yep.
movies about love, but none of them are romantic and happy, really. Well, there's, except for one.
We're going to have to try to avoid repeating ourselves because I think we've probably have similar thoughts maybe that we've expressed before. But I think doing another love movie is maybe unavoidable this month, but there wasn't completely unavoidable. It just sort of happened. I thought this group would like this one. I don't know.
You're not
Yeah, it was
wrong.
this movie.
I was like, yeah. Okay, cool. Before we get into it, though, has anyone watched anything good recently?
Also, Marshall and I were on a plane to and from Europe, and so we watched a bunch of movies on the plane. And one of them was the one about the dreams. Marshall, help me.
Dream scenario.
Dream scenario. That was interesting. Has anybody seen that one?
I haven't heard of it.
I have not. I like Nick Cage a lot, but I have not seen that film.
It was enjoyable. I was curious about the premise, like when the trailers came out. I just never got around to it, but I enjoyed it.
I don't think we've seen anything, right?
No.
Life's been hard. I haven't watched anything.
The most recent thing I saw in theaters was Furiosa, which was cool. Like, it had its moments, but it just, to me, wasn't as good as Fury Road, which I guess is a pretty high bar. But yeah, I don't know. Ultimately, a little disappointed.
It's hard to have the same effect on me that Fury Road did, I think, for really any other movie that I've ever seen in theaters, of being like, oh, everything's different now. And then this kind of does a similar thing, and it's like, this is all so good, but I've seen this.
Yeah, sure.
Which I like. I liked it a lot, but it wasn't like, it didn't blow my mind. Like, if I hadn't seen Fury Road, would it have? Maybe. It's paced way differently, but it's still good. I like Anya Taylor-Joy in it. It's fine.
I want to see it at some point. But
Yeah.
we'll see.
Before we left for our trip, Lindsey and I saw Hitman. That I enjoyed that one. New Linklater.
Yeah, another Before Sunrise connection. I haven't watched it yet, but I want to. I like Glenn Powell. I like Adria Arjona. I'm not actually sure how to pronounce her name. She was in that weird TV adaptation / sequel to Irma Vep, also called Irma Vep. That was on Max a couple years ago.
Those The only thing I had really seen her in before Hitman was she was on Andor, that Star Wars show, which, you know, it's mostly about Andor. She's a side character, but yeah, I thought she was good in that. But no, Hitman was really enjoyable, and it's on Netflix now, so anyone can see it pretty easily.
We got to see it with Richard Linklater doing Q&A and the two main actors doing a Q&A too.
Oh, that's
Damn.
cool.
It
Did you
was
ask
really
him
cool.
I was trying not to do like a humble brag. I was like, yeah, we
I think it's so exciting.
I was going to say, I know it wasn't out on Netflix before you left, so yeah.
We saw it in.
Yeah, I think it started like trickling out in the theaters, like right, like in the days that we were leaving, and I was like, Lindsey, if we don't go to this early showing, we're just gonna have to wait until we get back. So luckily it worked out.
Do you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. I think maybe I liked it a little bit more than Lindsey, but Lindsey seemed to enjoy it as well.
Cool.
Yeah, it was fun.
The last thing I saw in theaters that I really, really liked was probably I saw the TV Glow, which I mentioned on the podcast before, but not to this specific group. So I'll hang my hat on that again. I really liked it.
TV Glow. You mean show?
The full title is I saw the TV Glow.
Oh, okay. I don't know what that is.
It's hard.
I thought you were talking about the show Glow. I really like that show.
It's whatever the speaking out loud version is of poor search engine optimization. Because no one understands what I'm saying if you don't have the title already in your head.
I knew what you were talking about then.
Thank you. It's a new A24 film. It's in theaters now. It's the second feature-length film from the filmmaker Jane Schoenbrunn. Their last one was We're All Going to the World's Fair, which was really cool. I talked about that on this podcast too. A lot. In a similar vein, this will be a movie that I keep talking about and hoping other people watch so I can talk to them about it.
I won't watch it then.
Damn it.
I said Ben's got us with a couple of those. We watched Malignant and Barbarian.
Yep, that's true, actually.
Those are two of like a short list of recent horror movies that I've actually seen. It's not a long list.
Same.
I saw TV Glow is theoretically a horror movie, but in the sense of it's like really inspired by David Lynch and David Cronenberg. And they don't make necessarily horror movies like Malignant and Barbarian are horror movies. So it's a lot more like thinky stuff, I guess. It's really good. Malignant was dope. There should be ladies backwards fighting an entire jail cell of weird archetypes of like hookers all the time. In every movie should have that sequence.
Yeah, I think so.
That was a weird one.
When he throws that chair across the bizarrely large police precinct and he hits those people. I'm talking about Gabriel now, the backwards lady.
Yes.
And then Gabriel stands up on the desk for no reason. I'm like, Star is Born. I can't wait to see like Malignant. Like all I'm down for the entire Malignant series.
I think that movie lost me during that sequence. I was like, this shit's ridiculous. Like this fucking entity just turned into John Wick or something like out of nowhere. I was just like,
what's the problem?
What is
it's perfect?
Yeah, that's where I was like, this is really weird.
So yeah, it's all of a sudden just like
I was like, I'm not the target audience for this
fight choreo. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Goes from slasher to like John Wick style fight choreography for no reason. It's fucking great. Love that movie.
Yeah.
So
I think I'm on that same page, Ben. When that happened, I was like, oh yeah, here we go.
That's the stuff. Like,
that's it.
Yeah, I'll take all that you got. All right, do we want to talk about the portrait of the lady on fire? Okay.
Which one? Which portrait?
Love the lady on fire. You could I almost warned you not to watch Portrait of a Lady. That's like not a good movie. But Nicole Kidman's in it. John Malkovich is keeping her like locked in a house in Italy or something. It's not good.
So not too dissimilar.
It's
Hmm.
fewer. That one has more men.
I like that they say the name of the movie really fast in this one.
What's it called? And you're almost like, are they not going to say it? And then she says
They
it.
say it right away.
You're like,
Yeah.
I also thought goosebumps. I also thought a fun surprise for Greg and Ray, because I know how much you love Tar, and Naomi Merlant is also in Tar.
That's right.
I knew I knew her from somewhere, and I remember you saying, I like this lady because she's in Portrait of a Lady on Fire, and I could not remember which movie it was.
There you go. She's Tar's assistant that disappears halfway through the movie, and you're like, what's going on? You're like,
Mhm.
I knew I recognized her from something.
She turns state's witness against Tar for her crimes or whatever.
Yes. I remember this now.
Yeah. And she stars in this movie alongside Adèle Haenel. This was Adèle Haenel's last role before she retired in protest from the film industry, which is badass.
Oh, yeah.
It is.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's so fucking good that it's like too bad selfishly, but she's, making a statement about the horrible business practices intrinsic to the film industry and the exploitation therein. And very memorably at an awards show, I think while Portrait of a Lady on Fire was doing the awards circuit in France, because they're still cool with him, Roman Polanski was getting some kind of like Lifetime Achievement or Best Director award. And she loudly left the room while chanting, "Bravo to the pedophile." So,
Oh, no.
and then she quit acting forever.
Whoa, that's sick.
That's a good way to play it.
I'm going to do something similar and quit my job.
I mean, it started a lot of rumors, I guess.
That's what you want. It doesn't need to be true. Just start a lot of rumors.
That's how I feel.
All to say, I had seen this movie before. How about all the rest of y'all?
I had also seen it before, but I guess I haven't seen it since it was initially in theaters.
Oh, I'd never seen this. I don't see a lot of foreign films.
I had never seen it.
Yeah. And for this group's consideration, not to make it, I wasn't even trying to make a pun on like for your consideration, but it wasn't in Best International at the Oscars, which is when you may have watched it because France selected a different movie this year to compete. So there you go.
Did anyone see that movie?
I don't even remember. Do you know?
It's Les Miserables, but it's not the Les Miserables you're thinking of. It's not a musical. It's just a different movie called Les Miserables, I guess. Or I'm mistaking that with the thing that France didn't pick a different year, which they always do, and then that doesn't get into Mr.
It's just like France like historically makes like weird choices for their selection. Like this past year wasn't it also like controversial?
Taste of Things instead of the movie people liked.
Yeah, now I'm trying to remember. What was the thing people wanted to get nominated? We don't have to get sidetracked.
What didn't get into international from? Yeah. Okay, I think it was Anatomy of a Fall, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't in international.
Yes, because people were like, if it would have been nominated, it probably would have won. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So Zone of Interest like walked away with that category because Anatomy of a Fall wasn't eligible.
It's like nominated for Best Picture and like not international film.
Yeah,
kind of silly.
For sure.
It was funny.
They didn't. Yeah, I forgot what they put in. What was it, a year or two ago? But they keep not putting in Palme d'Or winners because Titan won the Palme d'Or, and then they didn't select that because they were like, people aren't going to like this.
That one I can kind of like make sense of. I was like, this is like a little weird for like the broader Academy audience, maybe.
I don't know. Americans love cars, right? Like, what's the problem? Anyway,
maybe not that much.
Maybe not that much. So yeah, who wants to give a 1-minute plot summary for Céline Sciamma's Portrait of a Lady on Fire?
I forgot this part.
This is another one where you can make it real quick and tidy if you want to.
I could try.
Go for it.
Just gonna wing it. Okay, so help me with their names. Sophia.
Marianne and Eloise.
Yeah. Are the two main. Sophie is the assistant, the house lady.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we open on Marianne coming on a boat to this place, and she comes to a house and learns or she knew when she was coming, but we learned that she's going to be painting a portrait of this woman who is not happy about the fact that she's getting married off to someone. And the Marianne has to pretend that she's just there going for walks with Eloise and paint her without her posing because she won't sit to pose for the portrait. So a week goes by and she starts to she paints the picture, and then Eloise's mom is happy that she's done with the portrait, but Marianne wants to tell Eloise that she painted her instead of her finding out on her own. So she tells her, and oh my goodness, this is gonna be longer than a minute. And she doesn't like the portrait. So instead of keeping the portrait and giving it to her mom, she like wipes her face away and ruins the portrait. And then the mom's upset, but agrees to let her stay for another 6 days while the mom is away and paint a new portrait. And while they're away, the two bond and sort of learn that they're in love with each other, and lots of stuff happens with them being kind of in love with each other, and then Sophie also gets an abortion, and she finishes the portrait, and it's sad because they can't be together in the end, and she Eloise goes off and marries the man she's betrothed to. Yeah.
You saying they
She sees her
bonded
2 more times.
You saying they bonded gave me really like serious, oh, they were lifelong roommates vibes. They never married. They were lifelong roommates.
I was like, it's 2024. You can say it.
Best buddies.
They were best friends. Neither of them ever married.
They like to hang out and lay together naked.
They're just really close in French.
Yeah. I like to think of like a leading question to get us into it. This one, though, specifically for Greg. Did the focus on Orpheus and Eurydice make you want to play Hades again?
Yes, it did. It did. I immediately thought of it. But yes, that did.
Yeah.
And did you play Hades?
I haven't. No, I'm waiting. I don't know why. It's on. I'm gonna start soon. Now's not a good time to start though, because I'm about to be on vacation, so I can't right now. But soon.
You gotta do it during work hours.
Oh, it's a game, is what you're talking about.
It's a video game, yeah, called Hades.
Got it.
Yeah. Hades 2 just came out. They're not characters in it, but in the first Hades, there are side characters that are Orpheus and Eurydice. You're in the underworld, they're there. Eurydice's mad at Orpheus because he turned around. I like all the discussion about that, and I just like mythology and moving it in, and the like being haunted by the future before it happens recurring thing with her in the dress is just so cool. This movie fucking rocks. I don't know what else to say.
Okay, that was good. Ratings?
Good podcast.
I like this movie a lot, actually.
The actual getting into it that I have is skipping to the end. The first time I watched this was immediately, I was like, that might be my favorite ending to a movie ever. It's incredible. It's just like so overpoweringly emotional, maybe, or just sort of like a movie like this that is so quiet that literally doesn't have music until that very anachronistic a cappella song that was written for this movie. It's called Portrait of a Lady on Fire. And then the other part of the music at the end, when they're actually playing the Vivaldi, you're actually hearing an orchestra do what she played earlier in the movie on the it's not a piano, whatever that thing is, harpsichord. Yeah. It's just like such an amazing ending. And I don't want to skip to the end, but that sort of was like, I'm watching a movie. I've gotten better about it, but this was early COVID, and I'm thinking like, ooh, what am I going to give this on Letterboxd? Like as it's wrapping up, right? And that happens, and I think it jumps like a full half a star just based on that last about 2.5 minute shot on Adele and Elle that just gets closer to her face, and that's just fucking amazing. I don't know. A lot of movies try the long shot of a character just like doing thing, emoting silently that ends with it, and a lot of times it just strikes me as like capital A acting for acting's sake. But this is just like such an amazing coda on this movie. I felt the same way about the end of Perfect Days, the Wim Wenders movie that was just in this international, ends different context, but a similar kind of thing. And that worked on me too. But this is just such a stellar, knocks it out of the park ending for me.
Yeah.
I like that. I mean, now we're on the end, but I even like the when she's describing the 2 times she sees her again. Even the first time, as soon as she like is, because I was expecting her to see her at first when they're walking around the art show, and then when she sees the picture instead and she's holding the book right away, I was like, oh, that book's gonna be open to page fucking 28, isn't it? As soon as I saw that book, I was like, she's got that book's open to fucking page 28. I know it is.
Oh, you know it.
I knew it. But I like that a lot too.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
Fucking cool. The way that the movie plays with them looking at each other and all of the tension it wrings out of that is one of those things that, like, watching the movie, sometimes you're watching a movie and you're like, for me, not for everyone on this call maybe, but for me, you lie to yourself and you're like, I could do that or whatever. But just, I feel like tension is so hard to translate and so easy to fuck up. And this movie does a great job balancing that. And I cut off Greg, I'm sorry.
It helped me that I had forgotten what the theme was in this month, and that the movie was French, and I stereotype people apparently. But like when the movie starts, and she's there, and she's like, "Oh, I got to paint this lady," and she's like, "Okay, she can't know," so it's just her like very intently staring at this lady for quite a while, and for a while I didn't realize it was going to be like a love story, because I was just like, well, she's got to stare at the lady, it's her job. And I was like, then she's staring at her a little too much, and I'm like, well, they're like French, that's like a French thing, right? They're just kind of like that. And then like she's staring at her one point, I was like, no, no, you don't look at people like that. This is, I was like, what? I was like, are these chicks like, are they? And Ray's like, yeah, definitely. But I
Yeah,
like that, like,
are they good? And I was like, yes. Like, don't you remember what the theme is?
I was gonna say that should be the new 60-second summary of the movie, just like Greg talking about the glances and the slow build.
But yeah, like, because you're not supposed to know right away, because like, yeah, there's a reason she's like constantly like just staring at her so intently, and then like she's trying to hide it too. So I like every time Heloise notices her, she'll like look away, like, oh, I wasn't fucking staring at you for 10 minutes. I'm not being weird. It's cool.
Your earlobe.
Yeah, I haven't been staring at your earlobe for 10 minutes. That'd be weird. I was looking at this rock on the ground. Also, I like every time all this is happening, they're at the beach a lot. And the beach is like the brightest fucking beach in the whole world.
Good colors.
It's very, very colorful, the beach and all that stuff.
Beach is really colorful. I like how dark the house is. It looks cool when it's dark, and they're just lit by like fires and some shit. I like all the lights. All the lights is good in this one for me.
Yeah. I think just watching it again, one thing that really stood out to me was just like how beautiful it is. Obviously, like the setting, anytime they're by the water, I'm just like, this is fucking so beautiful. But then just like really admiring like the lighting and the cinematography. It's just like, it sounds cliche to say, but it really seems like almost each camera setup, they were like thinking of it as like a painting in and of itself, like, you know, the lighting being like really perfect and beautiful, and it's a good looking movie.
There's also something about her painting that, like, because the shots of her painting are kind of long a lot of times, where just like her hand. Really like those. I don't know what it is. It's like, I feel like I'm watching Bob Ross. I'm like, oh, this is nice. Look, yeah, I got the little brush stroke here. Look at that. It's coming out
It's
good.
soothing, yeah.
It is. It's soothing. It's nice.
I think a lot of those
it?
sequences are when you it sinks into you that there isn't a traditional soundtrack happening or a score.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's like the scratching of the pen and stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
I couldn't help. So this is like a really weird circumstantial thing. Is we just watched a movie about Harry Potter's stuntman. This doesn't seem related, but I was thinking about the concept of stunt people, and I was thinking about how that actress was not doing that drawing, the painting. I thought it was definitely someone else's hand
Yes.
doing that, and so I was like distracted by that, and I was like, I wonder who's doing that.
The paint woman.
Every time I saw the hand too, I was like, "There's no way this actress is doing this."
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
I kept also thinking a little bit about Armageddon, because I was like, do you think it's easier to train an actor be a painter, or a painter to be an actor, or an oil driller to go onto a astronaut?
I was waiting for the Armageddon connection.
I kept thinking that. And I was like, no, they clearly did not train this actress to be a painter. And then I'm like, well, it would take so long to train a painter to be an actor. I'm like, no, it's just somebody else's hand. Why? What is my problem?
Well, I was very invested in the film, and I was not thinking about any other movies while watching.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm going to derail us again. This is a weird take that I really don't think anyone else is going to share. I mentioned it to Ray briefly. I think it's very weird. The third character, Sophie. The first couple times I saw her, I think there's a couple reasons for it. First of all, she talks a little funny, obviously, because she's like a maid essentially. So her responses are kind of like, until they like are like friendly with her towards the end, her responses are like a little too short and like matter of fact. You know what I mean? And then on top of it, she's way shorter than the other people. So she like looks out of place. Every time I saw her, all I could think was like, oh, this lady should be in a Wes Anderson movie. And it's because she looked kind of funny. And the way she talked didn't like was too like matter of fact, as if she was gonna have like some kind of joke to tell me. And I know it doesn't make any sense, but I could only think about it every time.
Her sort of like no affectation way of speaking would fit in with like the kids in Moonrise Kingdom and a lot of other Wes Anderson things. But I just think of like the child actors in Anderson films. And she's not a child, but she's tiny. So
she's tiny. Yeah, she just would need to be saying something funny, and then she'd straight face something funny, and that's perfect. She's ready to be in the movie.
I have to like watch it again, but in my head, she's like a full 2.5 feet shorter than the other two women.
She feels like
she's very short. Yeah.
Are the other two women tall, or is she just really short, or is it like both?
Maybe it's both, but I don't think there's particularly,
I mean, my takeaway also partly was that she's supposed to be a bit younger than them. I mean, I know that wouldn't make up the entire height difference, but I think that was kind of...
I don't think it would make up any height difference. I don't think that she was young enough to still be growing.
I don't know. When do you hit your max height as a woman? Is it supposed to be...
Like 13.
13, really?
It's pretty early, I think.
Yeah. It's that weird, like 7th grade, the girls are all taller than the boys for a year kind of situation.
She was always cooking up some random slop, too, I noticed. They are not eating appealing things.
Shit, man.
Oh, that's just standard.
That's just French. That's just straight Julia Child shit. French chef. It's sloppy. Yeah, out on this island in Brittany. So yeah, there are 4 named characters in this movie. They're all women. And by named characters, technically the mom is just billed as the Countess, but I'm counting that as a name. And then there are to my mind, 3 male characters with lines, 2 of which might be the same guy. The one who tells her, like, yeah, the house is past the trees. And then the one who's like, good morning. And then the one who talks about the Orpheus painting.
Oh, yeah. Mm.
Yeah, I guess there's
Other
not
than
a lot
that,
of characters that say
no
things.
dudes.
No.
Yeah. Well, not only not a lot of characters, but also very explicitly not men in this world, where these 2 women can sort of be in this bubble of protection, of intimacy. There's like some kind of spooky ladies out in the woods. They're singing their a cappella songs. You see them later. They're going to give you psychedelic drugs.
That was really funny.
They're going to turn your eyes pure black. But
So,
otherwise, it's just kind of them. Yeah, they're isolated and there's no dudes around.
Heloise has to marry this dude because her sister was supposed to marry him and died, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she just defaults to marrying this guy.
They don't explicitly state it, but it is heavily implied that she killed herself to avoid that fate.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That stinks. The whole thing is just really shitty for this lady. Like,
Yeah, it's a
I
raw
understand. Yeah, it's a bad deal.
She seemed pretty content with her other situation. So I think she's just
The
bitter by
nunnery.
the entire circumstance.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bad deal. Her sister's dead. Like, she's got to do the shitty thing her sister didn't want to do. It sucks. I already feel bad for her.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
and then I
so
think,
does
like,
she.
you know, the whole movie, she's just like, in her mind at least, just coming to terms with what she assumes is going to be like an entire loss of like freedom and free will. And I think that's why she's so distant at the beginning, because she's just like in a terrible headspace. And like, of course, you know, the situation she's kind of been thrusted into, it's like you've had probably hardly any time at all to really process all of this stuff. And I mean, if you can just imagine just like your entire future has been determined for you and you have no agency, you know, that'd be a pretty difficult and shitty situation to be in.
I was honestly too a little scared to see Heloise when they introduce her, because they take a little while to like let you see
Yeah.
her, and all they're talking about is they're making her seem shitty before that, because they're like, they mentioned that she won't let anyone paint her, you know what I mean, and then they mention like Sophie's very vague about the whole thing, like the other guy couldn't do it, like are you going to be able to do it, the other person couldn't do it, and I think she finds the painting with the face missing. And I was like, what the fuck is going on here? This is weird. And it takes a little while before they're like, well, why can't anyone paint her? And they're like, oh, well, she just won't pose. And I was like, what? That's not what I thought this lady was just being horrible to people, or like something was up. And they were just like, no, she just won't let them. Like, she just isn't going to stand there. And I was like, oh, forgot you got to stay still for like hours for someone to paint you. You can just not do that. It's not hard.
I don't know. Has anyone here ever had their portrait done? Because it seems like a not fun time. You got to sit there.
I had someone take a picture of me once.
Yeah, that's so much said
A
for.
little faster.
Yeah.
When I was in Disney one time, we did the like caricature drawings.
Yeah.
I remember sitting there making kind of a weird face, like I felt kind of awkward, and that came through in the drawing.
I want to see this drawing now.
I don't know if I still have it.
Bullshit.
It's of me, Amanda, and Jordan together.
Aw.
Yeah.
Check page 28. Oh, I meant to ask Lindsey too. Did this movie hit especially hard for you? Like with Jordan and everything not being able to marry her?
It's
No,
a really
not really.
good question. Who says I can't still marry her?
The circumstance for allowing it. It's just, the years of yearning.
No, you're right. You're right. I have to come to terms. My time is over. No longer stand a chance.
So, in addition to the social things that this movie has on its mind, with it's not even oppression, right? Because the world that it's depicting, the oppression isn't existing aside from the mom, but then she goes away. Then the bubble they're in is just this kind of fleeting moment, and they both know it in the moment. And it's like the last day that you're on vacation and you're going back to work on Monday, and you're just like, I can't even really enjoy this, but I also am like so emotionally at like turned up to 11 about every little thing that in my mind I'm like, is this the last time I'm ever gonna, get a free ice cream cone from the breakfast buffet? It's, or, or whatever the lesbian version of that is, I suppose.
It's definitely comparable to the situation.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Now I can understand. For a little while I felt like I couldn't relate to them, but now I 100% fully understand what was going on.
Thank you.
Because of the ice cream.
Yeah.
Yes, I've basically experienced this.
But in addition to that, I think the movie does a really interesting job depicting the power between the two central characters in their relationship. And the line that sort of unlocks that for me is when she's saying all of these things as evidence, is like, oh, I know you when you're like this. You bite your lip when you feel this way. You do this with your hair. And then Adele and Eloise is like, when you're looking at me, I'm looking at you. And she does all the same shit back to her about different things.
Mm-hmm.
The scene's awesome. I don't know. Not just go like, oh, we're not worthy, but you're like, oh, that was cool.
Good stuff.
Honestly, I think my favorite thing they say in the whole movie is when she shows her the painting, the first one. And I forget what Heloise says about it, but she said like it doesn't have any.
There's no life.
To it.
Yeah,
there's no life. Yeah. There's no life, and she goes on about it for a while. And Marianne says, "I'm like, oh, I didn't know you were an art critic," and she just goes, "I didn't know you were a painter."
Yeah,
great line.
That is good.
Wicked good. And I was like, "Oh, I almost got a hit."
Yeah, I like that she immediately puts her in the back foot with like, "Is this how you see me?" And just sort of like lets that question sort of linger. And she's like, "It's not about what I see." She's like, "Why not?" And I think she says like, "I could accept it not being true for me, but I like am, it sucks that it's not true for you," or however she puts it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but she does burn her ass with that. I didn't know you were a painter line.
It's wicked good.
I was really confused about that whole cover story of her being like a companion to like walk with her.
It's the idle rich. Members of the gentry. You just like, bring in friends, especially if you're on this, remote island in Brittany, and your mom's like, we brought you a friend in for the week.
Yeah, like this lady's gonna be here for 6 days.
Go
like
to the cliffs. You're gonna look around.
Yeah,
I mean, they don't explicitly state this, but I also feel like, perhaps you could look at it as like this person is kind of here to hang out with you because of the circumstance of like maybe the grief from your sister dying. Like there wasn't a line of dialogue that said as much, but like if you think about it in that context, I feel like maybe it seems a little less strange.
I thought it was like a handler because we're worried you're going to jump off the cliffs.
Yeah,
right. Well, obviously, mom didn't want her walking around by herself.
That's how I interpreted it. Was like because then she immediately runs, and I was like, "Is she about to jump off the cliffs?" I was like, "This is pretty crazy." You know what I mean?
Movie,
right? And I think Ray mentioned it. She was like, Marianne had I'm just a painter. I don't get paid enough for this face on it. She's like running after this lady.
It was also hard to imagine when she said like, I've always wanted to do that, or like I've always imagined what that would be like, and like the fact that she's like never just gotten to run, like that, like even little sense of freedom just was a mind boggler for me.
Yeah. I was confused as to what Heloise was doing before this.
Yeah, she was in a convent, right?
I think Yes.
And,
I don't exactly understand what the details of that entail, though.
Oh,
Not
because I don't know
running.
what the day to day is.
Yeah, I don't know the particulars of it, but I think it's like pretty strict. You know,
Yeah.
it's like sort
Yeah.
of, you know, similar to being a nun, right?
Picturing the first few scenes of The Sound of Music, but that's probably not exactly accurate. I was gonna say that when I first saw this movie, it wasn't before the Oscars. That is early COVID or whatever, or late COVID. Who knows? No, early COVID. I remember specifically it wasn't on Hulu until like March
It's
or
theatrical
April or
release
something.
in the US was like February 2020. It was like around
Yeah.
Valentine's Day.
Yeah. And so it eventually got on Hulu by like February or by like March or April. But anyway, it was early COVID. And this was of a spate of movies where I was just noticing like all these characters are wearing face masks. What's happening? Like the simulation's breaking down. And this is specifically the scene where she's running and she's like Eloise very consistently when they're outside has a thing over her face. But yeah, I love that scene. And she turns around and you get like the face reveal. And after just follow the camera following her for so much and you're hearing so much about her before that.
Oh, I think you mentioned it while we were watching it, Ray, that there's a lot of, because it happens right after that, a lot of really weird camera shots that like you don't normally see because it's like this weird image of just them zoomed in on some lady's ear. You know what I mean? Or like, because they zoom, like they go too close onto parts for like too long that normally you wouldn't because they're trying to like show you what she's trying to remember and stuff like that. And it just kind of looks cool and it's just kind of interesting and weird. So I liked all that too. I feel like I can remember a lot of pieces of this lady's face.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh,
Just
me
a lot.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I did just watch it, but still.
Yeah. They even talk about that towards the end of their time together when she's like, oh, you can now reproduce that image of me to infinity.
Mhm.
And she's like, and you know, eventually you'll forget what I look like and you'll only remember me as this and I'll have nothing of you. And that leads into that scene that's really good when she does the self-portrait, strategically placed mirrors.
Yeah, I really liked that whole concept of you'll only remember this picture of me. You're not going to remember everything else. I liked that.
I kind of, in some ways, feel similarly to photography when it comes to that. Like, if I feel like having taken some photos of an instance or a vacation or a trip or something, it helps me remember my surroundings when I like took that photo. And so, like, I feel like the memory is like much richer because of it. But I feel like comparing it to back then, I mean, like photography wasn't a thing yet, right? So it's like it even holds more value because they, you know, were limited into like what they had for like visual memory's sake, right? Like paintings were so much more a big deal, right? Like if you think about how the portrait was such a big deal because these two people getting married don't even know what each other looks like, right? So like that's why the portrait is so huge, is just so like the husband to be can like see what his wife even looks like. It's like crazy to think of paintings being like that fucking important.
Yeah, getting an idea of like what you're purchasing ahead of time.
Yeah. And what that represents for everyone, which obviously the movie gets into, but it's the thing itself being that sort of Eloise allowing it to exist, representing that giving over of control of her life. Yeah, it is crazy. It's good that that's not how it works anymore, but it does seem a little better than Hinge anyway. I don't know. I'm in a jokey mood tonight. I really love this movie, so I'm just in a good mood, I guess. Did any of you see Céline Sciamma's follow up? That's the director, Petit Maman. Which, if you haven't, good news. It's only 72 minutes long, and it's really good. Especially you guys. You guys have kids. You'd love this. You'd love that movie. You should check it out.
Yeah, it's a cool movie.
Really cool.
Sounds short, so
I think that when I heard about it coming out, because it was like not long after this movie, I was just like, I'd watch anything that the person who made Portrait of a Lady on Fire made. So I was down to watch it.
It's really different. It's really cool.
Yeah.
And we talked about it a lot on the podcast a little while ago, because for some reason we got in a cul-de-sac with a certain part of the other folks who guest on the podcast a lot. We were like pretending that it was a sequel to the Octavia Spencer horror film Ma, and like now Little Ma's back.
I was imagining it was like a sequel to this movie, and Sophie's abortion failed. She's little.
Not quite that.
Greg,
She is a small mother.
She's a small mother.
Can't believe. Yeah. Yeah, it takes a while, because it's like seemingly a day or two after they make her run those beach sprints that they actually go to the person.
Yeah.
Okay. I did not understand right. I was confused, and I did not understand right away that she was pregnant. I was like, why are they fucking training?
Just turned into Karate Kid all of a sudden.
Being a mother's hard work. You're gonna need some stamina.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't understand what I just. It's subtitled. I don't know. I missed something somewhere. And I was like, why are they fucking training her? And then the next scene is like all like they have her run. And then it's the scene where it's all the grass. And it's like kind of Wes Anderson, where all of a sudden they all stand up and like, oh, the characters are actually here. And then some of them go down. I'm like, now they're playing hide and seek. I don't know what's happening.
Also fucked up that like the lady who does abortions makes you like has like a
Next to
baby
a
that
baby.
crawls on you. Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
also like a 8-year-old girl in that scene too, hanging out during the abortion.
Here's a bunch of kids that are just gonna like be on top of you while this is happening. Hope you don't
Yeah.
mind.
Messed up.
There's just one bed, all right. There's not much place for them to hang out in that little hut, all right.
Right?
Yeah, what do you want me to go stand in the corner? You're in their house. If they want to just sort of roll back and forth on the bed on top of a stranger, why not?
Little
I mean, for real,
babies.
like that baby you got to keep on a surface, right? So it makes sense that's on the bed.
Oh,
And
God.
then the young child gets jealous, also wants to be on the bed.
Yeah, it all follows. I don't even know when we started recording, but I see we passed 9:45 here. So, what any other big things we want to talk about with the movie?
Oh, the first painting of her is not good.
They do a really good job. You see that you're obvious, and you're like, yeah, obviously that one ain't it. It didn't capture her.
Mm-hmm.
But you also kind of like understand why too, like based on her limitations. She's just kind of having to do it for memory, and she's not posing, and you can believe it's like, yeah, I mean, like you can tell the technique is good, but that it's like doesn't quite look like her. Like it's pretty, but it not flattering. That there's just like a lot of little things that make you think it's like not quite good enough, right?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good
Yeah.
until you see the next one, and then I was like, oh no, the first one was shit.
Right. What I was gonna say, I didn't know if we were gonna get back to it or not. Maybe it's good to save it for when we talk about the end of the movie. But I think like the absence of music, except for like the key moments in the movie, right, where it's like she's playing the music and then they're around the fire, and then in the end, I think that's all handled really well. But what it makes me appreciate, at least on the second viewing, was like how strong the sound design was. And maybe like I'm thinking about it too much from like a actually making the movie aspect, but I was just thinking about like how clean the sound design was even in like the beach scenes, because like in real life you wouldn't hear shit with the waves like crashing in the background like that. Like the sound would be a nightmare. So I was just really impressed all around with like how like good the sound design was, because it's so much more important when there isn't really like music or a soundtrack. kind of made me think a little bit about like the Zone of Interest and how like the sound design of that movie is so important. I feel like whenever you have such a quiet movie, sound becomes really important. And I mean, what I had remembered from my first watch of the movie was how great the cinematography was. So that's something that stood out to me on the second watch.
Yeah, definitely.
I love the crackling fire all the time. And the quietness just made me feel like maybe what it felt like to be in a time where there was no like TV and like sounds coming from everywhere. Like it just took me, like it set me in the like time period.
I think it's also, I mean, like I'm sure we'll circle back, but like why the ending is as effective as I think it is just like you can imagine maybe being in that circumstance where like there isn't music readily available and you're kind of just like stuck with your like sort of quiet surroundings, and then you experience an orchestra for the first time, just like swelling of all these different emotions. It's like so good. We can work our way there, but
yeah, I think that's fair.
I like all the fire in this movie. There's a lot of fire. I like when
I was going to say, did we talk about when the lady, in fact, is on fire?
We have not talked about that.
No,
we should. But
I like when the portrait is on fire of the lady.
The portrait of the lady is on fire. Yeah.
Yes. Right. Yes.
And you're like, there's a portrait of a lady and it's on fire. Maybe that's what the title's referring to. But oh no.
Nope.
She goes up.
You don't ever get to see it except for in the prologue, like that very first scene. But thinking back on it, I think the portrait she drew, it's like more a landscape, it seems like. But anyways, that first painting she drew that she didn't want her students to see, I was like, that was just like a really good painting, and I want to go back and look at it again. Because I feel like it holds more meaning when you've like experienced the rest of the story. But because I was watching it for a second time, I really appreciated that opening sequence as well. I
did want it to come back too. I was bummed we didn't get to see it again.
Yeah, I mean, like, I mean, it works well in a rewatch. I'm like not saying y'all want to rewatch it immediately, but just having all of the context of the rest of the film and then like seeing that opening scene again, I was like, oh yeah, that's a really effective way of like starting that story, I think.
I do like the way the movie starts too, because I don't know, I was just the right amount of confused because like she's teaching these art students. I thought she was going to be naked, just because they're doing like, because they weren't showing her and she was just like saying like, oh, make sure you capture these pieces. I was like, oh, this is like a figure drawing thing, like she's going to be naked. And they're French. I extra expected it. But like, yeah, so obviously, she tells you the portrait is upsetting her, and then she's on that fucking boat and her like luggage, the thing falls in. I'm like, I gotta know, what did she just dive in the water for? I was like, it must be that portrait. And then she's like on an island. I don't know, there's so much happening. And then like the box ends up being blank canvas, and I was like, I would not have jumped into the ocean for this.
But in hindsight, you know how important it was.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like the entire reason she's there, right? She's getting paid to do a portrait.
Yes. Yep.
Have any of you seen the Jane Campion movie, The Piano?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Those parts always remind me of that, because there's some stuff with it's remote and it's a lady, but there's a lot of guys there, and which is the difference. But at a certain point, there's an art object, I guess, that goes into the water and they jump in also.
I hadn't made the connection because I saw those movies like kind of far apart, but I feel like that was probably an influence on this movie. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
I was gonna say, there's unfortunately a lot less like iconic like female filmmakers, so you could maybe think that she would have more of an effect on Céline.
Yeah.
Speaking of females, I loved these two characters, especially hang on, Mary Kay. What is her name?
Marianne, painter.
Marianne
is the painter, yeah.
Just like her, like coming up to the island, carrying all her own shit, jumped in the ocean to get it herself, like helping herself to some cheese and wine, like just like going through life independent, doing her own thing. I just love it. It was beautiful. Love them as characters.
I mean, if you think about it, it's really a great juxtaposition for the other character, right? Because she is this like fiercely independent woman who's like has her own career and provides for herself, and like, you know, Eloise is sort of in an opposite circumstance, right? Where it's just like completely dependent, has no like agency. So I feel like it's just like a really brilliant part of like the writing of this movie is sort of how these characters are like, you know, I don't know, in very different.
But I feel like she still has the fierce independence, but she's just in the wrong circumstance for it, you know?
Yeah.
She doesn't get to use it.
Yeah.
But I did like when she helps herself to the food. She like really just is ripping pieces out of that bread. And I was like, at this point too, I don't even know where the fuck she is. And I was like, I know this isn't your house.
Right.
Go for it though, lady. Yeah, this is nice. Get that whole piece of cheese.
Just do it. Yeah.
I like I mentioned too how vibrant the beach is, but the dresses they wear are like that too, because Marianne's always in red, and then Eloise is always in like that bright blue or bright green.
Yeah, I think the costuming overall is just fantastic in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
So we should talk about When the Lady's on Fire. So they go to this gathering in the woods. It's nighttime. The fire's making everything look awesome. And some ladies start singing a sort of, I mean, IRL, a very apocryphal, purposely sounding, very anachronistic. I get those words mixed up all the time. Purposely sort of modern sounding a cappella song. After not having any music in the opening like hour-ish of the movie at that point. And that whole sequence is amazing. I don't know. It's crazy. They starts building and then they're clapping and then it's going around. And it's what they're saying is in Latin, and it's like they can't be together. And then like we will rise or something, or the two phrases that they're like trading.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You don't know Latin.
This is from Wikipedia, so grain of salt. I also don't know Latin.
Subtitles on that part.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, okay. Roughly translated as they cannot escape and we rise, respectively. So also playing on the Orpheus and Eurydice thing, I think. Yeah. They're saying, non possunt fugere, I think is the main one that they are saying. Anyway. And then she's looking over at her and she's looking back at her. And then she's behind the fire, which is sort of like the poster image. And then she walks away and her dress is on fire and they keep eye contact for a long time. And then she like notices she's on fire, collapses, gets as two people sort of like down, Mr. President on her. I don't know. That's
Marianne was just staring at her with her dress on fire, and she was just like, "I'm gonna paint the shit out of that later."
It's very much like I always have considered that not to be literal in as far as the amount of time it took or how she actually interpreted what she's seeing there, but more just like a kind of moment that snaps into your brain forever sort of thing. And I like that they don't necessarily spend time saying like, yes, despite her being on fire, she held eye contact with Marianne for quite a while with no ill effects. I've always considered that like a more lyrical kind of leeway that it gives itself a more tenuous connection to reality in that moment, which I really like. Which I think is informed by the sort of spooky song that's happening before that. And I don't know. That's just how it works for me. I don't actually know if that's the.
I think the music really adds this sort of like etherealness of it, right? Where it's like you feel like time is like sort of operating slower than what's reality or whatever. You know, it's just I don't know.
Yeah, there's a couple times because when they start showing Heloise in the white dress too, and she's not really there and like disappears and stuff,
Yeah.
where you're like, okay, there's like, I don't know, where you just kind of go with it, where you're like, okay, this isn't all happening, but like there's some
Right.
shit going on.
Yeah, I mean, we should definitely talk about that, right? Because she pops up twice. You know, it's really the only. I mean, what we talked about was like something, but this is almost like a ghost or something, even though, you know, it's not a ghost, but in the sense that it's like this like magical sort of imagery, right? What do we
Is it
do
her
with
in that white like wedding dress? Is that what she's getting dressed in at the end?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's supposed to be the same dress as that. But, you know, what the significance of when she pops up the 2 times, you know, and just like thinking back on it, you know, I'd be lying if I said the first time I watched it, I just completely knew what I was experiencing. Like, I think it's worth a discussion and be like, what was the significance of that?
Yeah, I think it is.
First
So,
time was before they hooked up for the first time, right?
so you think it's like when the color red shows up in Sixth Sense, and there's about to be a ghost, but in this, it's like when she shows up as a ghost, there's about to be sex. Or something?
Oh,
No,
okay.
the
Well,
second
I mean,
time,
the
the
first-
second time is when she's leaving, right?
Yeah. Well, that's in IRL when that
No, that was
happens, and she tells her to turn
Jasper.
around.
Yes, and she
Which is
doesn't turn
also-
around, right?
Also,
For-
no, she does turn around.
She does turn
Yeah.
around. Okay. no
Yes.
problem.
For me, it's more the same. Like the moments are fleeting, and you're as good a time as you can be having. There's a constant heaviness brought about by this impending, you know,
Wedding.
view that is going to drop. Like they both know, they have full understanding this isn't forever. As much as they're enjoying it now, it's breaking in a matter of, you know, days, and they're counting them down. So that's like a constant reminder kind of thing for me, that, you know, being haunted by the future before it happens.
Yeah.
Boy,
I almost wonder if it's supposed to be sort of like her spirit in some sense. And like the first time it appears, it's like calling to her, like beckoning her, like, you know, trying to, because it's like at that point they hadn't done anything together yet. And then, like, to your point, the second time we see sort of this like spirit or ghost or whatever you want to call it, it is sort of the end of that, right? So thinking of it in that context, because it's like, right, it's later on that we see that it is like whatever. I don't know if it's like the wedding dress exactly, but we do see that it is a literal dress. But yeah, I mean, I guess that would make sense to me, is that it's somehow like representative of like her spirit. Yeah, I feel like it has to have like some sort of meaning, you know. I'd be
Yeah.
curious to hear
I like
what,
that.
yeah, what the
I
director
assume
has
it's
to say about it.
the spirit, because the story, it's him bringing a spirit back, right?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? He's
Yeah,
bringing what's her name? Spirits.
Yeah, she's died and she's in the underworld, so he's bringing her back. So in that, yeah. So yeah, if it's
Oh,
that, then
it's like a
it's like
spirit.
she's already dead. This may be part of it too.
What does Marianne say the reason that he turns around is? She says she thinks it's to be poetic, right, or something.
Yeah, he makes the poet's choice, not the lover's choice, and then Heloise counters with maybe she told him to turn around
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
to let him live with the memory of her.
Yeah.
Which I really like.
I like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Marianne turns around. Don't turn around.
Such a cool movie.
She told her to, yeah.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, just like watching it a second time, it really feels like there's like not a wasted scene. Like, and considering like how like slow and like lived in the story feels, because they're pretty much in the same place the whole movie. I feel like the pacing's solid. Like it, you know, it keeps moving and working towards. It's like, all right, well, we're getting this portrait done. The first time I watched it, actually, I was like, oh shit, they finished that portrait really quick. It's like, I feel like this movie's barely been going for like 45 minutes or something. Turns out there's like more than half of the movie left, right? But I mean, it's just like it seems like each scene kind of like ends with like a really good line, and then it just like moves on to like the next thing and just kind of keeps going and building until the fucking crazy climax. But yeah, this time around I was just like really like especially taken with the dialogue and the writing.
Yeah, it's a quick 2-hour movie.
That's a really good point. Like I mentioned before, like tension's really hard to balance, but then also not doing something that on paper maybe would be so limited if you're looking at just the sets and the amount of characters, and like, yeah, there's not a bum scene in the bunch, right? And it just kind of flies. The pacing's kind of incredible. I don't know how they do that either.
It's not too tense because you get a nice bit of relief when you get to watch her paint a little bit. Oh, the happy tree and the happy little line on the dress. And I'm like, oh, it's okay. Everything's gonna be okay. We don't have to worry about this. It's a lie. It's not all okay. I know you like that end scene where she's like listening to the orchestra, but it would be better we cut out all those end scenes and she turns around and she's like, actually, I'm not getting married. My mom said I didn't have to. Come back in. And then she goes back in. The credits roll. Right? Are we not in agreement here?
You know, towards the end of the movie, I was like, Greg, I know this isn't going to end well, but I really wish it would. I just wanted them to have a happy ending. That goodbye scene was so heartbreaking. You know, when she goes and she like hugs her mother and she's just like, you know, trying to hold on to it for just a little longer, and then they hug and it's like, you know, just so painful.
Yeah, the editing of that sequence is so good too, because like there's that moment you feel like she's like trying to like smell her and they're just like soak it all in, but there's like 2 seconds before it gets weird, right? So that happens really abruptly. And then like the going down the stairs and like turn to look at me, obviously, you know, like calling back to the story. But like that editing kind of happens really quick too, where she turns around, the light hits her perfectly, and then like it closes. I'm just like, oh my God, cinema. No notes. 5 stars.
Behold cinema. GIF. Yeah.
Some notes.
It's so good.
I'm not getting married. Come stay.
Some notes.
I think this is
about that, right? As an option, they're like, "Oh, are you asking me to, you know, to stay or something?" And
that's not an option, though, right? Like, I know they mentioned it, but it's not like a real option. I think she maybe wanted her to say it, but they both know that like that's not a thing.
And that's why it's like heartbreaking, right? It's like she says no because, to Greg's point, it's like not actually an option. It seems like in this world that they're living in. But yeah, it just makes it heartbreaking, and just everything that follows. You know, you just like, you know, is more and more heart wrenching, right? Because it's like you sense that these two characters, like, you know, have this like strong bond with each other that is just destined to not exist, you know. That's just like had this like one brief moment in time, which, you know, bringing it back to like the Before Sunrise, you know, those trilogy of movies or whatever, it's like sort of a similar thing, right? Where it's like they have this really narrow window of time to like profoundly impact each other's lives. Yeah, it's just really cool.
Yeah. We're doing a lot of those movies, I guess, in a row where it's like, I know this isn't going to end the way I wanted to, but maybe it will, please, just once.
There's enough happy ending movies out there. We got enough of that. Give me a good heart wrenching, you know, lovers can't be together, you know. Those
except for Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, where a central couple ends up together.
Ah, yes.
Those two.
Yeah.
I think the fact that neither of them really moved on was like the hardest part, you know? Like, because you see when she goes and sees the portrait, you know, like she's, you know, has it turned to page 28. It's like, oh, okay, you know, obviously this is years later. And then, she goes into the orchestra to see that song. And it's like, oh, God. Neither one of them moved on, because obviously she's upset too, because the whole thing with the art students, and, you know, she doesn't want them to see the portrait. And
thinking about it again, it does have me make me think that Marianne has like the eyes of a hawk, because it's like she saw that painting from like across the gallery, and then she like saw Eloise like from across the opera. It's like they're not close together. Like, what? That's some pretty good vision you got there.
It's burned in her memory.
Yeah.
Yes, she can recreate it to infinity. Yeah.
I would recognize that figure anywhere.
Yeah. It's a cool movie. It does such interesting things with just the way it forms that relationship from the ground up. We already talked about the interesting way it shoots, earlobes individually and stuff like that. And just, through Marianne's perspective, for the most part, building piece by piece this image of the other character. And then sometimes playing with that dynamic, subverting it sometimes. It's just really cool. It does a lot of cool stuff. I try not to boil my talking about movies down to that, but I just really appreciate the different ways it attacks relationships and powers and power and oppression and good stuff.
I was just gonna say something because you basically said this earlier, Ben, about the ending. Because I feel like I haven't actually talked about it exactly. It is, at least in recent memory, one of those movies where, and this is kind of a rare experience where I like the sort of screen cuts to black, movies over, right, directed by so and so, where at the end of it I just felt wholly satisfied, where I was just like, that was fucking great ending. And usually I try not to be too harsh on movies, so even if I didn't love a movie, I'll be like, yeah, it's all right. But even for movies that I do like a lot, whatever, 4 stars, 4.5 stars, I'm like, yeah, it was really good. Was it perfect? Probably not. I think there's plenty of movies where I'm I'm enjoying it, for the most part, but it doesn't maybe quite stick the landing for me. So anytime there is a movie that just I feel completely sticks the landing, I'm just yeah. I felt that way about this movie. I felt that way about Whiplash, even La La Land. There's a few movies where I feel the climax just fucking does it right. And this was one of those movies. So I remember that feeling from watching it for the first time, whatever it was, 4.5 years ago. I still remembered that watching it this time. I was like, oh yeah, banger of an ending.
This being a 2019 movie, 2 other movies from 2019 that I also like the endings of: Parasite and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah.
I'll never forget the ending of Once Upon a Time.
That's just you guys not knowing American history.
Okay, even knowing it, the ending is still extreme.
Yeah.
They're talking about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood now.
Yes.
More just the literal last bits of that ending where Margot Robbie is over the intercom inviting them up. I think that hits real hard. It's good.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Parasite also from this year. Great year for movies, 2019. And then only bad forever because of COVID.
Yeah, I think that this movie and Parasite were also both neon, and I just remember thinking okay, neon, I see you.
Yeah.
Some good movies coming out. You acquired some good films on the international marketplace.
They're doing it. All right, cool. On a scale of 0.5 to 5, on any scale you're choosing aside from stars, what would you give Céline Sciamma's 2019 film Portrait of a Lady on Fire?
I'm always surprised that we have to come up with something.
All right, 5 out of 5 drenched canvases.
I'm also going to give it 5 out of 5 crackling fires.
I'll give it 5 out of 5 page 28s.
I'll give it 5 out of 5 slop dinners.
I'll tell you what my real one is, and then I'll tell you what I had to really work to not do. So 5 out of 5 seasons by Vivaldi instead of 4 seasons. And what I was thinking was 5 out of 5 abortion wind sprints on the beach. I don't know.
That's a really good one.
I'll
Greg
keep them
wants
both
to-
in there since Greg liked it.
It's wicked good.
Has it ever been 5s across the board like that? I'm just curious.
So when I used to mark them down in our letterbox, which I don't anymore, it's still connected on the link tree. Please check it out. I think Raiders of the Lost Ark maybe did, but that I remember at the time I was like, to my knowledge, that's the highest we've gotten. It might have been 3 people gave it a 5 and 1 person gave it a 4.5. Is my remembrance. I'm almost positive Mulholland Drive we all gave 5 out of 5 to.
I remember Mulholland Drive, but for some reason I thought somebody didn't like it and rated it poorly. There was
Still
one
your
that
lowest rating on the entire show.
I feel like it doesn't count. Not that one, the one I'm thinking of, because someone changed
Scott
theirs when they
Pilgrim?
realized everyone else gave it 5. Jurassic Park.
Oh,
Someone went back and was like, "Wait, actually, if everyone else is giving it 5, I'm going to give it a 5." And I was like, "Oh, that
Okay.
doesn't count."
so this was an organic 5 out of 5 with 5 people on, which would put it in an extremely rare class because that means it has to be a Discord one only. Or one of our mega episodes, which Jurassic Park was a mega episode. And that's just when I have more people than Mike's. If we call it a mega episode, like it's a thing we did on purpose. And I was going to say, I think Scott Pilgrim maybe got all 5s or pretty close to it.
Maybe I would have given it a 5. So
Got
That
those.
Yeah, I
weird.
think that's how everyone. Yeah. Okay. But we'll say this is one of our first, or at least at the very least, tied for the best rating ever. All right, great. I do actually have some good questions this one. So it's good that I lost the first episode because the people who were on the last episode, but I'm a cheerleader, they came up with better questions. They asked, what was your first movie crush or your first celebrity crush, even if there weren't in movies, I guess? And then because it was like, what was your root? Which is like a plot point thing but I'm a cheerleader. So what's your root? So what was your first movie crush? And then what was the first gay movie you saw?
I know my first movie crush for sure. I can start with that. I'll have to think about the other one a little more. But in
Go for it.
School of Rock, the drummer kid.
with the spiky hair, right?
Yes.
That might have been mine too.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
Oh god, I forgot about that kid. But yeah,
I loved him. I had a magazine poster cut out of him on my wall.
I was gonna say Titanic, Leonardo DiCaprio, but maybe it was the School of Rock kid. I don't know.
I was going to say what I said last time was Kirsten Dunst in Bring It On, but I'll try to add one every episode. So Anne Hathaway and Princess Diaries.
Oh,
The obvious answer for me would probably be Natalie Portman and like the Star Wars prequels. Maybe also Keira Knightley, Pirates of the
Are you an
Caribbean.
angel?
I was little Annie. I was like, she is.
Those are both good answers. If I stepped on at your second one, Keira Knightley and Pirates of the Caribbean, I was right there with you.
Is the parameters like it's like specifically a love story, or does it just have to feature gay characters?
We had, I think, a smattering of both.
Okay, because I was just trying to refresh my memory, and I think because my mom liked this movie a lot, I think I saw The Birdcage at a pretty early age. So that would probably maybe be the first one. If it wasn't that one, I'd have to do some more digging to actually figure it out.
That works. That was one thing that we cited in the last one is that until very recently, quote unquote, gay movies were like not ones you would have watched as a kid. They were like very serious dramas, usually about like AIDS. And it's that is just sort of a normal relationship script to build a movie around is a fairly recent thing without it being like a dramatic non-comedy. Except for The Birdcage, which unfortunately for me, I only watched in the last couple of years for the first time. So that definitely wasn't mine.
I haven't seen it in so long. I feel like I haven't really seen it. So I'm due for a rewatch, I think.
That movie rocks. That was our first episode ever on the podcast was The Birdcage.
Oh, that's cool. I was about to say it's another Mike Nichols. So maybe it's the summer of Mike Nichols. I'm going to make Lindsey watch The Graduate for the first time next month.
Do we have a theme for next month that could work for The Graduate? If you're already planning to do it, just to like 2 birds, 1 stone it, maybe. We'll figure it out.
that'd be great.
Big Mike Midsummer.
Amazing movies.
I'm also trying to Google to refresh my memory, and Mulan came up, so maybe I'm going
Mulan.
with Mulan.
Because the guy thinks he's gay.
Yeah.
He's like, do I like dudes?
So funny.
I don't have good answers for these questions. I feel like I can't remember my first like movie crush, and I can't think of the first gay movie I
Lame,
saw.
Greg.
I feel like I must have seen a bunch, but I feel like I'm drawing blanks on all of them.
I was thinking Mulan. Is it because she dresses up as a man? Are they considering that like it's drag culture?
Maybe. I was thinking because what's his name is like falling in love with her, and then turns out that she's a woman and he didn't know.
That's
So
immediately
mad.
what I assumed.
It makes sense too.
I feel like all these ones I'm reading are like, oh no, that movie came out in the last 10 years. That can't be the right answer. I mean, like I saw My Own Private Idaho for the first time like 3 years ago or something.
Cool.
Oh, Beginners is a good one.
Oh yeah.
Oh God, I'm really worried it's that Netflix movie you had me watch, right? It can't be.
Movie.
With the gay Christmas one.
Single all the way.
Greg's
I
a
have to have
single
seen
all the
another,
way. Lock
like
it in.
gay centric movie before that.
I think lock it in. And did you have a celebrity crush at any early age?
None that I can think of.
That's okay.
Lame.
This
I
this
know.
one's very recent, but I thought maybe just plug it in case I hadn't waxed poetic about it yet. But All of Us Strangers was really good.
Oh yeah.
Came out like end of last year. Worth seeking out if you haven't seen it.
No, Greg, you saw Call Me by Your Name before you saw Single All the
Oh,
Way.
you're right. Might have been that one. Bad experience to start.
No, Moonlight was before that, right?
No, Moonlight was after that.
Was it the same year?
Moonlight was 2015.
Oh, that was a long time ago. Moonlight.
I haven't answered my first gay movie. I don't know. For some reason I was remembering that like The Butterfly Effect had like a character in it that was gay. I mean, like that's not central to the
Lock it
narrative,
in.
but like I feel like that's that's what I'm gonna say. Because I love that movie for a long time.
Kate on the last episode mentioned the film adaptation of Rent, which we think was like 2005 or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Which
I
again,
saw that,
it's
actually.
about Rent, obviously, but has gay characters in it. Does that do it? Or did we do it? When there's two questions and there's this many of
did
us, I'm kind of like, I don't know if we're done yet.
We did it.
We did it.
We did
Okay,
it.
go
We did it.
team. Thank you all for being here. We'll go reverse order. Giar, Craig, Ray, Marshall, Greg, and Lindsay.
Woohoo.
Yay.
If
It's a big reaction.
if you sing music, we can close it out. I'll just stare off and cry while you
We
sing.
gotta do our claps, across the fire to go to bed. I was doing this when the Blu-ray music was like on the menu or whatever, and Lindsay was like, elsewhere, not paying attention. I was literally like doing a whole dance for you, and you were not even looking at me. Unbelievable.
Unappreciated.
You can find our stuff on Linktree, linktr.ee/late to the movies. By the time this episode comes out, it'll be after Providence Pride, but if there's Pride events near you, partake. Why not? There's some fun stuff happening this weekend for sure. Whatever weekend it is, there's fun stuff happening all the time when you're on Late to the Movies. Is that how we end?
Yes, always.
That's it. Yeah, all the time. I remember distinctly.
That's how we end, I think. I'm tired, y'all. All right. Thanks, y'all.
No problem.